Welcome everyone to our Research Data Services Texas State 2025 Love Data Week workshop series, Bring Data to Life, How to Create Clear and Impactful Realization by Jenny Johnson from iTech Customer Engagement. Thank you, everybody, for coming here, joining us today. We're so excited to have you all here. We truly appreciate your interest, and we're looking forward to exploring today's session with you all together.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Johnson, and welcome to Love Data Week. I'm going to be presenting today on bringing data to life, how to create clear and impactful visualizations. And basically, this is a kind of a beginner to advanced class. Hopefully, everybody will pick something up and learn something new so that we can all learn how to make better visualizations. So let's go ahead and get started. A little bit about me. I am a business process analyst and I work in IT Assistance Center, which is ITAC. And I am the subject matter expert for a lot of the Microsoft stuff. So that is the Microsoft Fabric, which is the Power BI, but also some of the other Fabric tools, Power Automate, Power Apps. I also do the CRM for marketing, and then I work in Adobe Premiere and Adobe Photoshop as well. I'm also, just as a BPA, I do consultations just to help people figure out what it is they need to be doing with the software on campus. So if any of those things if you need any of that stuff, you can use that little QR code. You can scan it, and it'll take you to my bookings page. We can have a consultation. Just to let you know, my academic background, I do have 2 degrees, which are very helpful for data visualization. The first is a studio art degree with an emphasis in illustration and art direction. So that's really helpful for layouts and, just good principles of design. And then my master's is in technical communication. I did emphasize in user experience. So yeah, it was a very circuitous route to get here, but I really do enjoy what I do here at ITAC. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. Three big overarching sections. We're going to go over the process. That's the how to get your data and to make the data visualization. We're going to go over I have a little bit of a demo, so some slides and stuff that you can look at. And then I've got some links for resources. I also have a Word document that I can send to you guys that has a whole bunch of links for books and websites and different online LinkedIn, Microsoft Learn courses that are extremely helpful and that I come back to time and time again whenever I'm trying to work on a data viz for the university. Now, I will say, before I get started right here, although I do create data visualizations for ITAC and for the Vice President of IT for the VPIT office, I don't generally do that for the university as a whole. I might help people out with that, which is kind of what my job is here in customer engagement, to help them figure out how to make a good data visualization, and then they're going to take care of what they do. I'll help them publish it, keep track of where things are, how to refresh it, and things like that. So the most of the charts that you're going to see are things that either I made as an example or are related to ITAC or the IT division of IT. Um, that's just so you know where we're at. I'm usually trying to teach people how to do stuff. I'm teaching them how to fish. I don't generally fish if I can help it, but I do like the fishing. So let's talk about the process. So before you can make your killer visualization, you do have to know what it is you're going to visualize. All right. So what's the story you're going to tell? That is the storytelling data in data viz, that whole principle. Once you know what the story is you're going to tell, then everything else is going to fall into line. So let's start with what is data visualization. It's taking information and putting it into a visual context, maps, graphs, to make it easier for the human brain to understand and to pull insights from. That's it. It's taking charts and paragraphs and all kinds of different forms of data and making it look like a picture, an infographic, a pie chart, whatever, so that people can understand and see things like trends and numbers and things like that. So it's the graphical representation of information and data. Now, what's behind me right now is one of the first data viz that was published, and this is John Snow's cholera data from the Broad Street outbreak back in 1854. And this is a different John Snow. This guy actually knew what he was doing. He was not in Game of Thrones messing around with direwolves, okay? So if you look, the little red dots were areas that he had noted had incidents of cholera. Okay. And so the bigger the dot, the more incidents of cholera there were. And so when he started mapping it out, he noticed, hey, there's a big cluster right in the middle of this map. I wonder what's there. You look at it. If we were to remove that big dot, you would see that is a water pump. Now, previous to this, everybody thought cholera just came through the air. You got the vapors, you fainted on a couch, and then you passed away. They didn't realize it was waterborne and it was from contaminated water. So they shut that pump down, and all of a sudden, the numbers just started to fall and fall and fall. They fixed it and the cholera outbreak stopped. So, there are real world implications for creating these kinds of graphs. So, if anybody's like, ah, you're silly pie chart, these things can save lives for reals. Okay. So let's talk about how this usually goes. And this is experience that those of us that have had to do these before knows. It's usually someone, a higher up, perhaps, could be a supervisor, could be a teacher, could be somebody who just says, hey, I need a chart. I need a graphic. We need a chart. And you say, a chart of what? And they're like, I need a chart. Here's the data. Make me a chart. And that's all you get. Okay. So sometimes you don't even get the data. Sometimes you have to be like, okay, well, what do you want? So usually they don't, they may not have the data. They may not know what kind of chart they want. When you say, well, what kind of chart? I don't know, a chart, a pie chart. And then it turns out, well, they want a pie chart, but they want to be able to see data over time. Well, that's not going to work. They may or may not know who's going to be looking at it. Well, who's the chart for? What kind of chart am I making? Well, it's just a chart. We're going to send it to the higher ups. Who are the higher ups? I don't know, the higher ups. And almost always they have an unrealistic deadline. So if this happens, the important thing to do is to not panic. Okay? We're going to help you out here. So the first thing we're going to have to do is figure out the purpose of the visual. Okay, so there's two different kinds of general purposes. You have exploratory and then you have explanatory. So exploratory is just what it sounds like. You are looking to explore and see what is interesting about this data. Okay, so typically now that we have AI embedded into all kinds of stuff, or even giving data to ChatGPT, you could give a spreadsheet to ChatGPT and say, tell me what's interesting about this data. What trends do you see? Okay. And it'll make you a chart, and then you can look at it and go, huh, well, that's interesting. And it's great for like spotting trends and outliers. You might see something, well, what's this dot over here? Well, let's figure that out. Let's figure out what's going on. And then with explanatory, that's when you have something specific. So maybe you did an exploratory graph first and you said, huh, there's some interesting trends going on. Let's actually dig into that. And now we're going to tell you the story of how many phone calls we get at the call center during the first week of the semester. Okay? And what they're usually about. And so it's good for validating or invalidating a specific hypothesis. Maybe somebody said, well, I think that most of the calls that you're going to get are going to be about the Wi-Fi. And then it turns out, nope, it's actually about net IDs and logging in. Somebody can't log in. And that's important too. So the shorthand for this, for those of you that enjoy adventure movies, is exploratory is Indiana Jones. Okay, he's the archaeologist. He's going out there. He's finding the Holy Grail. He's looking for little golden statues, and he's trying to find something interesting. But then he comes back, and he's Professor Henry Jones Jr., and he's giving specific lectures about the thing that he found. So exploratory, self-explanatory. So when we're talking about the data narrative model, this is kind of the general way that it works. It's about 6 steps. First is to gather your insights. That's getting your data together and then looking for the trends. That's the kind of that exploratory process. And then from there, you're going to define your narrative. You want a central theme or message. And then you want, from that message, you're going to craft your storyline that aligns with the data. You should not craft your data to align with your storyline. That's cheating and dishonest. So don't do that. Then you structure your story. So you're going to take your data and you're going to put it in a logical manner so that you can build a coherent flow. So it's going to wait, you put your data together so that it makes sense for what you want to look like. Good. Thank you. For visualizing the data, that's when we actually make the cool stuff. Okay. And then contextualizing, that's where you might be putting in little call outs or explanations so that people understand what it is that the chart is trying to present. That's especially good if you don't know who your audience is going to be, if it's just going out into the world. And then the lastly is that you want to highlight your impact and emphasize your key insights to the significance for the outcome. So like if there's like a really weird, like, see this point here, this is where we see, that the thing that we're talking about is 100% accurate, so that you can highlight that point right there so that it makes it abundantly clear what you're talking about. So this is kind of your general data narrative model. So when we talk about gathering insights, this is just getting your stuff together. It's getting the Legos together so you can build your whatever it is you're going to build, your house, the penguin, the one of the star destroyer, whatever, right? Things that you need to know when you do this. Do you have permission to access the data? Sometimes people say, I want you to oh, you should be able to get into this data. Well, can you? Or are you going to have to go through somebody else? That's important. That could affect time. That could affect how often you refresh. So that's an important thing to know about. Do you need to download it? Can you just make a connection? And then cleaning your data. You know, data is trash in, trash out, especially when it comes to visualizations. If you put dirty data in, you are going to get a kind of it's not you're not going to get great visuals, all right? So you want to make sure that you have good, concise, and clean data, okay? There's 2 ways to do that: extract, transform, and load. That means you get the data, you mess with it, and then you load it into your visualization software. Okay. That's usually used when you have to make it conform to like your database, or you're putting it someplace specific. I usually see that with things like spreadsheets or comma separated value files where you can actually do things to make, take out columns there so that you have a quicker load time later. However, sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you have a direct connection. So that is your extract, load, transform. So you extract it, you load it, and then you go in and say, okay, I don't need this, and I want this, and I need to do a total over here, and I'm going to make this column. And that is where your data is actually, your raw data doesn't get changed. So it stays in wherever you pulled it from, just as it is, but you change it after it comes into your environment, and then you can make the data. It's especially good for databases, SharePoint lists, things like that, where you don't want to change what's gonna before it goes in. You may not have permissions. If you may be, like you may be connecting with Banner, you definitely don't want to change that. So those are your two, ETL, ELT are your two different kinds of data cleansing. All right, defining the narrative. Another important part. What are you trying to do? What is your story? What is the end goal of your visualization? What is this going to say? Okay. And once you figure that out, you figure out what information you need. The data decision matrix is really helpful for that. If it falls on one side, you need it and it has value. If you falls on the other side, you don't need it and it has no value. Okay. So you want to kind of figure out what you actually need. Get rid of all of the stuff you don't need. It's going to make loading time faster. And honestly, it's just easier to deal with when you don't have as much data cluttering things up. How are they going to interact with it? And who is the audience? If you have knowledge of who's going to be looking at it, spectacular. Now you can craft it in a particular way. You can make sure that the legends make sense. You might have shorthand that you can use and you can just shortcut things because they already have context. So that's another important thing. And if there are KPIs, which are your key performance indicators that are important, which ones are the most important? Because we want to try and keep our story as simple as possible. Graphics or visualization should have like story per, one overarching story per graphic, if possible. If you're doing a dashboard, that's a little different, but for just the chart itself, you should have one like a sentence. It shouldn't be a paragraph. It should be just like a sentence. This tells the story of how many calls the call center gets in the first week of classes and which categories get the most calls, period. And then you go from there. When we talked about then the transforming and loading, preparing the data, this is again, you want to make sure you have the right access. You want to make sure everything's accurate, complete, up to date, standardized. I cannot emphasize getting standardized and consistent data enough. Um, Depending on what you're dealing with, just having a different, if it's one word is capitalized and the other word isn't, okay, now you have two categories. It doesn't know. So try and make sure everything is consistent as possible. If you can help them with the data load, with actually gathering the information, even better, because now you can make drop downs or bullet points or whatever so that radio buttons so that you will get consistent data all the time. If necessary, you can modify your data to suit the needs of your analysis. You can group things, you can ungroup things, you can total things, stuff like that. And then where are you going to store it if you have access to it or not, depending, where is it going to actually live? Is it going to live in a SharePoint file? Is it going to live in OneDrive? Is it in a database and you're just going to have a um, data map over in, BI or whatever? Okay. So making information available and keeping it consistent it's very important. It's going to make things so much easier. I cannot emphasize it enough. I would, spend a good bit of time. I've got some resources in there about how to clean data and make things consistent. Please look into it because it's a good thing to have in your pocket. So now we get to the good part. How to choose a visual that's going to work. Okay, so this isn't just about picking the right chart for the job, it's also making it so that someone viewing it can understand it and it suits its purpose. It's telling the story that you want it to tell. Oops. Okay, so let's talk about choosing the right chart. Different charts for different purposes. You've got your comparing and ranking. You've got your change over time. Distribution, that's histograms, pyramids, geospatial, those are your maps. You got your heat maps and cartograms, relationships, scatter plots, tree diagrams, parts to whole, how much does it take up? That's your donut charts, your pie charts. Qualitative, word counts and icons to show the numbers, and then you've also got just tables. Sometimes you just need a table to show what you need. Sometimes a table is the best chart or visual for what you're trying to do. Um, you can also have, and it's not in here, but there's also having um, a single card of data. So sometimes you just want a card that says total and then with the actual total of whatever the story is there. So your total calls in, we're talking about the total calls that are coming into the call center. They have to do with net ID. Total number is in just a little right there in a card. That might be what you need. So you can play around with these. All of the ones that are currently on behind me are available in Power BI. There are tons of other ones. There are entire books on how to pick the right chart. So play around with it, but this is just kind of a good general guideline of how you can decide what's important and what you want to use. Okay. I was joking. So Lisa, who's in this call, is my facilitator and she's my coworker. And there she is. Hey, Lisa. And I was joking with her. I was like, look, I put a picture of my desk in here. Uh,
She's not lying.
I'm not lying. I have problems. I have ADHD and I do have doom piles, and so this isn't too far from the truth. But even I have to declutter from time to time. And so we're going to go over some 5 basic rules on how to declutter your visuals so that you're knowing your audience, choosing the right chart type, reducing noise and distraction, applying the data ink ratio. If you know Tufte, that's a big one. And then how to use your white space wisely. So let's go into this. All right, decluttering your chart. These are all how to make things. So knowing your audience's familiarity with the data can actually help make things simpler. So, so what you see here is this is the same information. Okay, I'm pulling this from the same area. It is giving the same basic info. However, the one that's for public consumption, you can see has instructions and what the chart actually shows. So you can see that it shows the volume of IT support cards that IT has received each year, sorted into months. So I'm describing what it is because I don't know who's looking at this. This is publicly available. Somebody that's, in Russia, for all I know, could be looking at this going, interesting. I didn't realize that they were having that many calls that were coming in from chat. Um, you've also got how to do what you want to do in here. Okay, so you can select your year and down here, and then you select your month over here. So these are the instructions, and then you can see it's kind of simplified with the colors, year totals, and then the total shown will change depending on how you click on things. Now, for internal use, they don't need to know all that. They know all that. This is for reporting purposes to our higher ups who may or may not check the other chart. So they're looking at week by week. So it's the same information, but now it's broken down week by week. They can compare it year by year. They get a whole year total of everything that's going on, and then they also have the total shown. But there are no instructions and there are no explanations because they already know this is internal. Okay, so that's kind of a general how knowing your audience can help with that. Decluttering. So again, let's talk about chart types. So these are, again, same information. One is, but these are 2 different people that are using the info. Okay. So on the first one, the user needs the totals. Okay. They just need to know how many Lenovo computers are in the Department of Advising. Okay. So they go in and they can click what the Lenovo here, and then they can see what areas and divisions light up here. And these are slicers, or filters. So they filter it down and it'll give them the number of assets here, and then they can also look and see by what cost center that they are allotted. Okay. So this is where they're trying to figure out who owns what and how much that value is, right? Over here, this is for people that are actually needing to look at the who's having the most problems with what types of computers, right? So in this instance, we it's a different it's over time, so here's the week number. So this is by all the, we got all the 54, what is it, 54, 56? How many weeks are there in a year, Lisa? Quick. Over 50 weeks in a year. But also we're out some of those weeks, so it doesn't matter. And then it tells you who's having the most tickets and where and when we're getting the most thing. You can see right here, this is around the start of the semester, I believe, and we start getting a lot of, people like, oh, hey, my computer didn't work. I just came back from summer and all this stuff is having problems. You can also do the same drill down. So over here you have the manufacturer, over here you have the manufacturer. But we're looking at number of tickets versus the where it belongs. So that is another way of seeing what chart type you want to use, right? Removing noise. We were giggling about this morning because that chart does not spark joy. Okay, it that is oh my God,
No.
it does not. If you Google bad charts, that will actually come up. I promise. Um, when you're talking about simplifying or reducing noise in chart, you want to remove elements that do not have value or are necessary to explain, and you want to make it and you want to simplify it at the same time. So you can see here in this data, it's probably very good data. I mean, for the people that made it, I'm willing to bet that it's really good, um, and that they can see, oh well, this obviously, this is where the Moraxella catarrhalis is, having whatever it is for asthma. Okay, but it doesn't make sense, for other people. So perhaps it does make sense, but it's there's a lot of colors. So when you're talking about reducing noise, things you can figure out. If you make the palette monochromatic, will it still work? If I took this thing behind me and I took all those colors away and just made it shades of blue, would I still be able to figure it out? Probably not. If you're comparing things, this is comparing things. You have control and then you have the asthma. Can you clearly differentiate the charts? Kind of. Um, I would I would make it two different charts. That might be easier. And then will you need additional information for the chart to be useful? If I can't tell what the totals are on this, and if that's important, well, would I have to put my mouse on it in order to see the total number? Well, that may be okay for people that have good vision, but if somebody that is visually impaired or maybe using a reader, that's going to be terrible for them. They're not going to be able to tell at all. So just kind of keep these kind of things in mind when you're talking about, when we were looking at the other one with the instructions. Again, I removed instructions if you don't need instructions. This one might need instructions. So things things to kind of think about. Data ink ratio. Edward Tufte is really one of the big names in DataViz. I highly recommend going to one of his conferences or talks if you can go. There is an excellent student rate, which is about half the price as opposed to being faculty or staff, but it's worth it. You get all of his books, access to his website, and the chats and the community that's in there, and you just get to listen to the dude talk, and he is just chef's kiss. Okay. So data ink ratio. So this goes back to when we were printing charts as opposed to, just looking at them on the screen. But it's the proportion of the graphics ink that is devoted to the non-redundant display of data information. So basically, the total ink that is used to print the graphic, okay, is, that's everything. That's the instructions, that's the call outs, that's the different you know, it's all the stuff, the title, it's your, everything, as opposed to just the data. Okay, so you want to figure out what the ratio is so that you can have low data ink is really good in most instances. Okay, so oops, go back up. So here you have low data ink, so you can see very clearly differences here. Okay, here's medium, still not bad. There's a little more talky talk down here as opposed to, up here you've got a little more, this one doesn't have the back. High data ink, which is we've removed the back, so you can't now you can't. So here they removed the lines so you could see clearly where the totals were. Well, now you can't see that at all. Okay. You can't see what the totals are. So if you're just looking for general trends, this is good. But if you wanted to actually know the numbers, not great. Okay. So you want to find the ratio that works. Okay. Um, I shoot for medium usually. It's a nice midpoint. Uh, getting a high data ink that works it can be great, but it can be difficult. And you can see all these are in black and white. So that's the other bit. We're not even taking shades of color into account. We're just saying, okay, if I put this in black and white and I look at the amount, what is the ratio? Okay. And then finally, white space. We need white space. We need to be able to figure things out and where things belong. So in the first graph, it's great. It's understandable. You can see, hey, it's going up, and then here we are. Oh, oops, don't do that. Okay, that's your general thing here. Now, if you start adding stuff under here and putting stuff over here, and then there's a whole bunch of, it you can't read it. It becomes that previous it becomes this one again. Okay, this has got way too much. There's not enough white space in that. I would have more or a different graphic entirely. Okay. So here's some other best practices, and then we'll take a quick little Q&A break. Focus on your main message. Okay, so remember that you are telling a story. Okay, that you want to make sure that you have a clear, concise message, and that what you are showing is showing what the answer is. Okay, so it's a single key insight. For multiple messages, multiple visuals. Okay, that's why we have dashboards. Dashboards are multiple messages, but that one graphic should have one message. Accessibility, cannot emphasize this enough. There are going to be people that may have problems with visual impairments. Color blindness is the number one that we look into. So you want to make sure that you're choosing palettes that are accessible to people. So that means that there's a good contrast balance. You're not doing like green and red only. There are other ways to do, to call outs where it says good on one side, bad on the other. Whatever you need to do so that people can differentiate between different categories or understand your message. WebAIM is great for that. And then you could also look at the WCAG. I believe we are now in 3.0, and they have different levels of adherence for what you should be looking for as far as like the contrast ratio, colors. But usually what I say is if it's understandable in a monochromatic, maybe with one color, then like over here in this behind me on the other chart, go with that. Okay. Do not mislead with your data stories. It's easy. It's easy. You can, I tend to be suspicious of data that people give me in a spreadsheet and I don't know where it came from and I can't verify it because I don't know what they did to it. So know the, where your data came from, the heritage of your data. Um, so that you can make sure that you are telling a story that is accurate. Because you can show a chart that makes it look like something is doing something it's not, and just it's not accurate. Okay, um, it's lying. Don't lie. There you go. Simple. And then also, if you're going to be doing this a lot, consider making a style guide. I have a style guide that I like to use, where I have a particular set of colors. I tried to use the Texas State Next colors. I believe those are changing again, but that's fine because I do have a template, and I can just go and change the colors in the template, and it'll automatically trickle through to the various charts. So you want to have things like what colors you use. Um, what fonts you use, how the numbers are going to look, where the numbers are for consistency and for clarity, especially if you're doing a lot of series of things. If you were to look at the vice president of IT's page, there's a whole bunch of different charts on there, and you can see that there are some charts that have a different style guide than others. So, probably at some point what we'll do is we'll have one unified style guide and we'll make sure that it's all consistent so that people see a chart and go, oh, that's from that person. And it's just easy. It's easier. So like if I give a chart to somebody else to include in a publication, they know what to do with it. Okay, so before I go into this little demo before resources, quick question time. Anybody got any insights? Am I going too fast? Y'all just want to see some cool stuff?
There's
Questions
no
in the
questions in the chat, so I know
Obviously, I am killing it.
you are
Yeah.
killing it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's talk
Please,
about how we
I,
put it all
I
together.
have a question.
Sure.
Okay. So can is it possible to do analyze data from two different sources? So for example, if I want to talk about, let's say, um, for example, I want to research into housing affordability, right?
Hmm.
And I have one source of data which gives me, say, prices of houses over a
Hmm.
period of time. And then
Okay.
I have a whole different set of data on, say, factors that may influence the increase of prices, like say unemployment, all those, like they are separate data. Can I work with those two different
Hmm.
sources to to do an analysis and then some conclusions?
Absolutely. So, what you want to do in that kind of instance is that make sure that there is a correlation. So, what you're talking about is making a relationship or a correlation graphic. Okay.
Yes.
So, where you're talking about, okay, I want to look at the prices of houses, and here are the things that happen. Let's say these are the factors that happened at that time in this month and this year, and then all of a sudden the prices went down. So the reason that you might say, okay, well, the reason the prices went down was because there was 5 hurricanes in a month or something, right? So the prices went down because, all the houses were flooded or whatever. Okay. So you can absolutely do that. The key there is making sure, number one, that there is an actual correlation, that you're not talking about something that could be accidentally, just kind of a coincidentally correlating. For instance, there's the cicadas that come out every 17 years or whatever, happened to coincide with I'm trying to remember what it was, but there was some like weird like asteroid or something, that not asteroid, no, it is, that goes through our galaxy, right? Our
Mm,
sub our sorry, our solar system. So you could make a correlation based on that asteroid is affecting those cicadas. It's not. It just happens to coincide. So you just want to make sure that there is an actual influence on that. So you would want to make sure that you have, information that's going to help back up that data. But as far as grouping them together, as long as you have something that is going to link them together. In this instance, I would say that would probably end up being like the dates. So you would have your first inform like, let's say you have one spreadsheet that has all of your housing index prices, right? You have another one that has natural disasters, okay? Also by year, month, whatever. And then you have a third thing, which is a just a date table, right?
yeah.
So then you can link both of those to the date table, and now you can see, using your exploratory view, if there are correlations. And then once you see that, you can further explore and kind of use the explanatory method to kind of really shore up your conclusion. So yes, absolutely, you can do that. I do it all the time. I've linked admissions data with, what's going on, as far as a time of year, based on location, how many times they
Mm,
were visited, how many people are in that area, that kind of stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of conclusions that you can draw. You just the big deal on that is just making sure that there's nothing that's just like a coincidence, because you don't want to accidentally say, oh, well, obviously the cicadas are, coming out because, the asteroid's back. It's just a
mm.
coincidence. Okay?
Okay. So
Awesome.
so what you are saying, something as common as dates can link to data.
Absolutely. Dates, places.
Okay.
You could use any, as long as there is a common category between the two,
Okay. Okay.
you can absolutely link it. You just want to make sure that it's yeah, that there's actual causation between the two.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Let's see, where are we? Okay, it's a quarter till.
Oh, good. I was just about to tell you. Get it, girl.
Yeah, girl. I'm doing pretty good, I think. Okay, so I'm just gonna do this through thing. So this is kind of a project that I did just to see if I could. I had this vision one night as I was watching Lord of the Rings because that's what I do. And I was thinking about how I could take one big data set and turn it into just about every type of chart there is so that I could show people, okay, this is going to be, location, this is over time, this is totals, that kind of stuff, right? So looking into that, I was like, well, what's going to have that kind of stuff? Obviously, it's going to be the battle at Helm's Deep in the Two Towers, because you have a whole bunch of armies fighting each other over a period of time. You have mortality rates. You have different events that are happening. You have locations changing because it's a big battlefield. And so that was kind of where I started. I'm going to tell you right off the bat that I did use the movie version as opposed to the book version. They are a little different. Um, I wasn't able to get someone from Weta Workshop to confirm that. I did try. I did reach out to them, I promise. But we'll just kind of go from the estimates of what I've noticed. So this is a battle that is happening over the period of one night. So you could look at it hourly. You can look at it. You've got different armies. You've got different races fighting. You've got different all kinds of stuff. So let's start looking at this. Now these are live charts, so I can actually click on things and they'll change. And these are all in Power BI. So these are the time series visuals. So we could look at a mortality count by time, and you can see for the first 3 hours, nobody's doing a lot of stuff. They're just kind of standing around taunting each other. And then all of a sudden, at 1 a.m., something happens. And then you can see, okay, well, obviously, Isengard is suffering a lot of stuff. That was the orcs, which you can also see down here, the Uruk-hai. And if I click on that, I can see just that, and it changes all the other thing. I can also come over here to the filters and change it that way and say, I just want to look at the Isengard numbers. I just want to see what happened with the Fangorn people. Okay, none of the Ents died, so that's not an issue. So these are just kind of the general things you could do with that data set, right? So this tells me who died over what time period. I can also, nope. Come on. I want you. There we go. So now let's look at part to whole. So here's your percentages. These are the same numbers, right? But now I've totaled them together. So now I can see the percentages of mortality counts based on, how much of the overall percentage of people perished in the various armies or race, right? And then the army strength by race also. These are totals. So I totaled them all up, looked to see, okay, so if I look at the Uruk-hai right here, you can see it 100%. Lonely Mountain, if I want to see all the humans, there's all the humans. So it kind of gives me that kind of general thing. I do have by default, I do have the flyovers or the rollovers on, but you don't have to have that because you can still see down here. I'm giving it the same number down at the bottom. It's just rounded a little bit, okay? And you still have that information here. So this is just additive, right? It's not, you don't need this to understand the chart. All right? Let's look. Come on. Come on. You can do it. Where are my controls? There it is. Okay. Correlation and relationship. Okay, so this is what we were just talking about, right? Let's look at the location. So I have location information as to where the army was at different parts of the battle. Okay, so this is over time. And so then I can use that to figure out what the mortality rate was at that time where they were in that location. And then from there, I can figure out, oh, this is how many orcs died at the Deeping Well, and then the Deeping Combe. And then I think this is actually in, oh, and then that's the rest that got in the forest, okay? Who's in the Hornburg, who's in the Deeping Wall. And so you've got all of these numbers right here, but then you can also see it here on the map. So you can see the big, this is where a whole bunch of the orcs died here. This is where the second big bunch died. And then there was a few that died here and a few that died here. The majority of the humans and elves were stayed right in here, although there were some humans that died in here at the end. So these are all relationships. So by taking that relationship of time and place and linking it to where the people were at that time and place, now I can figure out, okay, how many died where, when. So that's what we're talking about with the relationships as well. So it's a very similar thing as date and time. Speaking of date and time, this is a flow. So this is the same thing. This is so we were talking about natural disasters perhaps. So this tells me the different events that happened at different times. So I could take this and then I could overlay it over that mortality chart, and it could tell me, oh, when I look at the 4 a.m. and there's a big jump in deaths of the humans and elves, well, I know that's because they blew up the culvert. And so that kind of helps you. That's that correlation also. So there's different ways to do it, but this one's actually called a narrative flow. It is in Power BI. You can actually use these. And then I believe finally, remember I was talking about single values and actual charts. So here's the timeline of events. Same thing that was on that previous one. Same thing here. Except not in a timeline. Now it's just in a chart, so you could see the days and the times. Okay. Here's your total deceased at the end. Here's your total alive. For those of you that may have seen the movie, here's a little thing, the kill count for Legolas and Gimli. Although that is disputed because Legolas did shoot the orc that Gimli was sitting on, who he maintains was already dead. Okay, so that's some general kind of just examples that you can use. Let me get into our resources here. So again, Tufte books. Cannot recommend them enough. And I'll make sure you guys can have access to this PowerPoint. I will absolutely get this PowerPoint so that we can have that with the recording. So the Tufte site, the edwardtufte.com, couldn't be easier. Those are the different books that he has currently in publication, but they're also available on the website. Different chapters are available on website. Yes, it's Tufte is he's so good. Other books, non-Tufte books, which are quite good. You have the Better Data Viz, Guide for Scholars, Researchers, and Wonk. Jonathan Schwabish. It's a very good book, very easy read. And then the Killer Visual Strategies is also quite good. It's very good for picking out types of chart. Courses you can take. Microsoft Learn. If you want to learn how to use Power BI, I cannot recommend Microsoft Learn enough. It's very easy, but there's also LinkedIn Learning, which we have available to us as faculty, staff, and students for free. Just make sure you log in with your Net ID and password, and you can try any of these. Getting started, essential training. You could learn advanced DAX. They have classes on visualization, data viz, elements of design, things like that. All those things are available. You just have to do kind of a search and see how you want. I can't recommend enough for people that are visual learners because it does show you. A lot of times they also have takeaways, and then sometimes you have quizzes too, so you can actually get a little mini certification. And then for faculty and staff on campus, we do offer a kind of a general training on how to create Power BI on campus. Unfortunately, it is not available to the students as of yet. We're working on that. There's different levels of teaching that have to be in place before I can do that. So I have to get permission, and plus the provost has to have actual eyes on it because otherwise it could be considered, it's not actual course. So we want to make sure that it's good to go before we let that out for everybody. And here's our last slide. So in conclusion, just remember that, humans love visuals. We love to look at things. We do a lot of, even people that prefer to hear information, tactical people, seeing, especially with visuals, makes things so much easier. People remember it better. Most of what is in your brain is visual, and it processes faster. So, leveraging that to give uh, stories about your data would be an awesome thing for you to do. Again, there is my little QR code if you want to book some time. You can also, that's my Teams is JJ25. You don't want to go just searching for random Jennifer Johnsons. There's usually like anywhere between 3 to 5 of us on campus. If you do that, make sure you get the one that has kitty ears, and I'll show you that why in a minute. And then you can also email me. It's jennifer.johnson@techstate.edu. And that is my presentation. Let me stop my share. And yeah, this is why I say look for the one with the cat ears, because that is what I wear. So any more questions, comments? Can I help you guys out with anything? Yeah. Awesome. Um, if you if you run into problems using Power BI on campus, you can always contact ITAC. They do try to solve it with themselves first, but if you run into a big problem, they will contact one of the SMEs, the SMEs on campus, which is usually me, and I'll do my best to help you out, regardless of if you are faculty, staff, or student. So thank you for coming. Y'all have a great rest of your day.